What is a compound path? A compound path in Illustrator is a single object that's made up from two or more overlapping paths, allowing you to create transparent holes where they intersect. This allows the object to share the same fill, stroke, gradients, and other effects, unlike you can do with a simple group. The difficulty becomes, especially when we're working on single color artwork, like black and white artwork, that it is very difficult to tell the difference between the two. So we're going to take a quick look at a group versus a compound path and what the differences are and how to tell one from the other. So believe it or not, compound paths you see all the time, and primarily and commonly in letter forms. So basically, and what this compound path allows us to do is see through the empty spaces. So if I drag the letters over top of the blue shape, we can see the blue through those. Each of these letters are a compound path. So I have two objects here, and I'm going to drag these both partway over top of my blue object here. So we see that while they look the same out here on white, when we put them over top of this blue color, they're not. The top one is a group, the bottom one is a compound path. This is a simple way to tell what you have, is to drag them over top of a color or even over top of your pasteboard in Illustrator. But it's easier, I think, to tell if we go over to our layers panel and I select this object down here, you'll see there's a blue dot out next to it, and it tells me that it's a compound path, as opposed to this object here. Now with the blue dot out next to it, that tells me it's a group. And in my layers panel, if I open up that group, I can see both of the individual shapes that make that up, the white and the black. So one way to demonstrate the value of this is if I select this donut and I go to my swatches panel and I change it to pink, it changes the entire object. If I select this group and I change that to pink, I don't get the same results because it applies the fill to both individual paths. So a group is two or more paths, but they're simply grouped together. And this can be beneficial because what it allows you to do is create a piece of artwork. Say you have an illustration of a person sitting at a desk. You can create your desk with all of its different colors and materials, a brown top to simulate wood, gray legs to simulate metal, and you can group these all together so that you can move them around as one element and they don't get separated, but each of the individual elements can have a separate color, as opposed to a compound path, which anytime we change the color is going to affect the entire shape. So compound paths can also be as simple as you want them to be. For example, our little donut here. Or something more like this, which has a higher level of complexity to it. Compound path, compound paths. Next, let's take a look at how we can create a compound path. And we're just going to keep this simple for the time being. So I'm going to create my donut that I had before, and I'm going to select my ellipse and draw this out, make that black. And then I'm going to select my ellipse again, and I'm going to draw out another shape on top of it. And let's fill that with white, just so we can see the difference at the moment. Select them both, and I'm going to center them up. And now, easier to see what's happening as if I place a color panel behind it. Now if I select these two objects, they're a group, right? They look just like our example from before. But if I select these two objects, both circles, both ellipses, go to my object panel, to compound path, make, it now converts that group to a compound path. If I've made my compound path prematurely and I need to edit it, I can edit this a couple of different ways. One is I can double click on this. It sends me into edit mode. And I can edit my individual parts of my compound path. Or I can select it, go back to my object menu, compound path, and I can say release. It'll release them back to individual objects. I can do whatever I want to with it. Select them, go back to the compound path, and make. Command 8 is the command to make a compound path, the keyboard shortcut. I can also, if I drag this up here, I'm going to create another shape. It's important to note that you can only, when you create a compound path, it is simplest to do it between two shapes and not a lot of shapes. So however we want to do this, we need to do it each, in two separate shapes. So I'm going to make a slightly more complex one here, just so we can see the difference. Let's make this a little bigger, and let's duplicate it and make this one a little smaller. Say I want a shape like this. What I need to do is select these two shapes first, create a compound path out of them, make. You see that they don't really seem to have changed, except that, again, if I go back to my layers here, I can see that this is now a compound path. Illustrator views it as a single shape. Now I'll select the black background, go back to my object menu, compound path, make. Another way to go about this and make more complex objects, and I'm just going to create the same basic shape, except it's going to have two cutout shapes inside of it. So I'll create this one, and I will create a second one. And I'm going to select both of these objects first, not my background object. And I'm going to create a compound path out of these, so they're a single object. I can also use my pathfinders to help in this process. So if I go to my pathfinder panel, our second one here is minus front. So if I select this object, it's a single object, and this object, and now I do minus front, I can get a more complex shape with multiple openings in it.